Faith Ringgold, author, illustrator, and activist. Faith Ringgold was born on October 8th in 1930 in Harlem, New York. Due to her asthma complications growing up, Faith was forced to stay home and miss school. With this, her mother was able to teach her how to express herself by sewing quilts. Faith was born during the time of the Harlem Renaissance, which influenced her to pursue her artistic talents. Faith attended college in New York and attended the New York City College in 1950. She received her bachelor's degree in arts and education in 1955. After receiving her degree, it was very hard for Faith to find a job at an exhibit due to her being African American. With these struggles, she decided to become an activist in 1960. Some interesting facts about Faith Ringgold. Her birth name is Faith Willis Jones. She was married to Burdett Ringgold in 1962, which is where she obtained her name. She began teaching art at the University of California in San Diego in 1987. She created Tar Beach, which was originally a quilt, and she turned it into her most famous book, which was her first book, Tar Beach. Tar Beach was about an 8-year-old girl who flew over New York City, and her goal was to obtain any object that she flew over. This is very symbolic because in the 1930s, where this book takes place, African Americans had a hard time obtaining anything due to them being Black. Tar Beach won her the Coretta Scott King Award as well as the Cadillac Medal. And we talked about these two medal and awards during our children literature model. So I thought this was very interesting that she was one of the people that won these awards. My favorite works from her is If a Bus Could Talk, as well as Dinner at Aunt Connie's House. Those were my favorite two books from Faith Ringgold growing up as a child. Faith Ringgold is an American icon. She pursued many things, and she pushed many boundaries and opened up many doors for people to follow behind. She is one of the many reasons African American women have the rights that they have today. She is to be admired and respected by all who know her. I personally am glad I had the pleasure of researching her and reading her books growing up. I hope you find this information both entertaining and useful. So as I mentioned, one of my favorite books was If a Bus Can Talk. And I also wanted to show you guys my handout, which I decided to do a brochure instead. Here's the brochure, and here is Faith Ringgold. Put a couple of pictures of her. And here is a picture of her book Tar Beach, right here. And her other books, If a Bus Could Talk, and Dinner at Auntie Connie's House. Down here is the quote that she originally made, the Tar Beach quote, which she made the book from. And being that If a Bus Could Talk is one of my favorite books, this is the read aloud that I will be doing, If a Bus Can Talk. The story of Rosa Parks. Illustrations are on both pages. These illustrations seem to be pastel colors. So the book starts off, it says, "This morning, a strange-looking bus pulled up at my stop. It didn't look anything like my usual bus, but it was on time and I didn't want to be late for school, so I decided to take it. The door opened and a voice called out, 'Step on up, young lady.' I got on thinking I'll ask the driver which bus this is. But the driver was not in his seat. I paid my fare and looked around for him. There were lots of passengers, but their faces weren't familiar. I started to ask one of them if I was on the right bus, but before I could, the door closed and the bus pulled away from the curb, with no one in the driver's seat. The sudden start sent me reeling down the aisle, and I landed in a seat, holding on for dear life. None of the other passengers seemed to notice anything was wrong. 'Stop this bus and let me off,' I shouted. I wanted a bus with a driver. Please don't take that seat, Marcy, someone said. How do you know my name? Which one of you is speaking? I asked, looking around. But the passengers were talking among themselves, reading, or just staring out the window. This is a special bus, Marcy, and you are sitting in a special seat reserved for a very special person. Amen, amen, chorused the passengers. What bus is this? I asked. This used to be the Cleveland Avenue bus, but now it's the Rosa Parks bus. She is the patron saint of the civil rights movement. One day a year, we reserve that seat in her name. Take another seat and I will tell you all about her. Now, the voice seemed to be coming from the bus itself. I could hardly believe it. I was on a talking bus. Trembling with fear, but curious as I could be, I took a seat across the aisle and settled down to hear this remarkable story. So the story goes on. Rosa Macaulay, the first child of James and Leanna Macaulay, was born on February 4th, 1913, in Tuskegee, Alabama. When Rosa was 2 years old, her father, a skilled carpenter and house builder, left the family and went up north looking for work. Her mother took Rosa and Sylvester, her baby brother, to live on their grandfather's small farm in Pine Level, Alabama. They worked hard there, raising chicken cows, vegetables, nuts, and fruit. Rosa helped her grandfather clear weeds and tend the crops. The family also picked cotton in neighboring fields. Here's Rosa and her family. Rosa Parks, her dad, her mother, and her little brother. From Rosa's earlier childhood, she could remember scary nights when Ku Klux Klan, a brand of hateful white men dressed in white hooded robes, would ride past their farms shooting off rifles to frighten the black people. Rosa knew that the Klan had burned churches and began tortured and lynched many black people. There were times when Rosa's family slept in their clothes so that they could run if the Klan decided to burn their house down in the middle of the night. Scary. Here's a drawing of the Ku Klux Klan. Despite these fearful conditions, Rosa's grandfather was an outspoken old man who made it known that he had a loaded shotgun and was not afraid to use it to defend his home and family. Grandfather Sylvester instilled a sense of pride in his children and grandchildren, and in Rosa most of all. Rosa was a nice little girl who loved praise, but she hated the disrespectful way whites often treated black people. One day, a white boy threatened to punch her, and Rosa picked up a rock and threatened to hit him back if he did. When her grandmother heard about this, she was very afraid because she knew something like that might cause Rosa to be lynched one day. When Rosa was 6 years old, she went to school. Her school had 50 to 60 children in one room and only one teacher. In Pine Level, Alabama school for black children only went up to the 6th grade and it was open only 5 months out the year, while school for white children went through the 12th grade and was open for 9 months. And the white children could take a bus to school while the black children often had to walk a long way. However, Rosa's mother, Leanna, had plans for Rosa's education. Leanna was a teacher in a one-room school in the village of Spring Hill. To teach there, she had to travel a long distance and then be away from her children all week. But she saved up so Rosa could further her education. When Rosa was 11, she went to Miss White School for girls in Montgomery, Alabama. Several years later, Rosa went on to high school at Alabama State's Teachers College for Negroes. She had to drop out of school when first her grandmother and then her mother became ill. Rosa's mother got well, but her grandmother later died. Here's a picture of the girls in the school. And this isn't a chapter book, but it's pretty long. And our limit is 10 minutes. So I'm going to read this and then I'm going to close it up and wrap it up. It says, one day on the way home from work, the bus driver told Rosa to get off and enter at the back of the bus after she had paid her fare. Then he drove off, leaving her in the street. This was common practice then. It is no wonder that black people would often walk a mile or more to and from work rather than ride the segregated buses. The buses were the worst form of segregation because black people could only sit in the back of the bus. If there were no whites in the middle section, blacks could sit there, but only if no white people were left standing. Black people couldn't sit in the same row with whites, even if there was an empty seat in the row. And it was during those times I got to know and love Rosa Parks, said the talking bus. She was a great lady with quiet dignity despite all the cruelty she faced because of the color of her skin. Here's a picture of Rosa getting married. I'm just going to go through a little bit more due to the time. Gonna stop soon. I'm actually going to read this because this is the part where Rosa made history. So it says, one fateful day, December 1st, 1955, Mrs. Parks took this very bus home from work. The bus driver, whose name was James Blake, told Miss Parks to get up and give her seat to a white man. There were other black people sitting in the same section, and all of them would have to get up so that white man could sit down. Rosa knew that the segregation laws were unfair, and right then and there, she decided to do something about it. She told the driver she would not give up her seat. This was the same bus driver who had wronged her before. When Mrs. Parks refused to give up her seat, Blake called the police and had her arrested and taken to jail for breaking the segregation laws. It was for this singular act of courage that one day a year Miss Parks' seat has been reserved, said the talking bus, and why we don't want to see Blake's driving this bus ever again. Amen, amen, chorused the passengers. So I'm going to end the book right there. I'm actually over my time at 11 minutes. The book basically goes on to tell a little more about Rosa Parks and when she went to jail and how people protested for her and how it all changed when she wanted equal rights and she didn't give up her seat for the white person to sit down. I really love this book and I really love Faith Ringgold, like I mentioned. The learning experience activity that I created was for the students to recreate Tar Beach quilt using a poster board and pictures that they cut out of magazines and even old books that they find. And in the story, the girl's name is Cassie, who flies over New York City. I would have them put a picture on their poster of themselves to represent Cassie in the story. They will be recreating, as I mentioned, the Tar Beach quilt, and they would use these different cutouts to make a big picture, and they would be using the style applique as she used to create her illustrations as well as her quilts. So that is the learning experience I will have them create. I think this would be a really interesting thing for them to do. Very hands-on and very creative, and to open up their mind to see how to be creative and to throw everything on there, basically like a collage, but it's called applique, using different things and piling them on each other, and that would be the experience. So thank you guys so much for sitting with me. Faith Ringgold again was the person that I chose. Thank you again.